If you're tasked with deploying end-user computing capabilities to users during the next year to 18 months, the thing that you have to focus on first is what are they actually trying to do? What is it the users need to achieve? It really isn't just about the technology, it's about how people work through technology. So what does that work require? If they require security, you have to build security in from the beginning. If they work in an environment that is naturally decentralized, where departments make decisions for themselves, then the technology you deploy needs to be able to support a degree of federation in management. If you don't do that, you're going to find yourself running hard to keep up later, just so that you can manage what is designed to be centralized technology in a federated environment. Think first about the result, and then deploy the technology to meet the result. There's lots of choice out there. The challenge is actually identifying what it is you require. Over the next year, the main thing to consider for many organizations is actually a renewal of what they have now. Any organization that skipped Windows Vista and that has not yet completed a migration to Windows 7 needs to complete that migration by April 2014. That's when support for Windows XP runs out. What that results in is an upgrade and a refresh of existing capabilities for many, many users. Now, of course, when you're refreshing the capabilities of those users, when you're giving them a new personal computer perhaps, when you're renewing their operating system, that's the time to think about, well, who should have a virtual desktop? How do we deploy those images? How do we set up the image for the next period of deployment, which, remember, could be 3 or 4 years, so that it's going to be easier to manage and easier to look after during that period of deployment? So the key thing really to focus on over the next year to 18 months is how you complete the next phase of renewal in your environment so that it supports the growing demand for workforce mobility and, of course, for reduced operational overhead on a per-user basis. The trends that are in end-user computing today, some are very clear. There is a shift towards greater device diversity, there's a shift towards mobility in the workforce, and there's actually an ongoing shift in the way that people interact with each other. The time dependencies are becoming greater, but the mediums through which they interact are changing. So, for example, we are seeing a shift away from gradually email towards more sort of community-based social networking type capabilities within the workplace. So I think those sort of trends are very visible, and everybody's aware of those. What I think perhaps they don't really see is an implicit trend underneath all of that actually makes the transition possible and makes the future much more promising than the present. And that trend is actually the withdrawal from the management of devices and, for want of a better term, the assets from which end-user computing is constructed. If we carry on managing all of the individual components and pieces, then it becomes very difficult to change, and it becomes very difficult to adapt to change within the business environment. So it's becoming increasingly obvious that in a world of diversity, which is really where we're going to in end-user computing, from a much more homogeneous environment, it's becoming very apparent that you need to be able to standardize the way that you manage, standardize the actions of your management processes and tools in a way that is much more tolerant of, and perhaps in an eventual future, independent of, the nature of the things that are being managed.